The moment you admit that there are no apostles today, then you have immediately admitted that within this age, there was a major shift in the first century.
Could you talk about the arguments that continuationists make, and how do cessationists respond to these views?
Yeah, there are a couple of different arguments, and obviously I'm sort of just trying to catch a number together. Mm-hmm. There would be other variations, but I would say some of the main arguments that continuationists make, in fairness, again, having sort of gone through their work, I would say maybe number one would be, nowhere does the New Testament explicitly state that the miraculous gifts would cease with the apostolic age. And that's true. I would grant that. But that argument cuts both ways. Nowhere does it say they'll continue either.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so once, back to the point I made earlier, once you admit that there is any change between the apostolic age and today, then you've granted that point. So that would be one that they would make. Another would be, they would say that some New Testament passages seem to imply that those miraculous gifts will continue to Christ's returns. And when they say some, there's one they point to a lot, and that's 1 Corinthians 13:10, that ultimately these gifts are going to continue until we know in full, and that's when Christ returns, is how they would interpret it. My response to that would be, first of all, everyone agrees that's honest. That is one of the most controversial and difficult passages to interpret in the New Testament. There are some, I think at one point I counted somewhere around 12, there might be more, but somewhere around 12 different possible interpretations of that passage. And so you never build the heart of your theology on a passage that's that much up for grabs. And I would also argue that the truth is, for most of church history, that passage was used exactly the opposite, to argue that, in fact, the gifts had ceased. So I don't think that argument, there aren't passages that imply that, and that's the one they point to, and it doesn't imply that as well. Even some honest sort of, I won't say proponents, but certainly ones that are comfortable with the charismatic interpretations, like a D.A. Carson, would admit that passage doesn't support what they say it supports. Mm-hmm. So that would be a second argument. A third argument, I think, that they would really want to camp on those two New Testament expressions. They would say, look, when you look at the Scripture, you look at the New Testament in particular, you see these two time periods. You see this age and the age to come. And they would say, okay, what cessationists do is artificially divide one of those. They take this age, the church age, and they artificially divide it into the apostolic and the post-apostolic age, without biblical warrant, they would say. And so that's an artificial reading of the New Testament, is how they would argue. And my response to that would be, again, back to the gift of apostleship. The moment you admit that there are no apostles today, and most charismatics would be here, most reasonable charismatics would be at this place, there's no Paul today, there's no Peter today. They're not giving scriptural level revelation from God. When you say that, then you have immediately admitted that within this age, there was a major shift in the first century. And so we're not creating that artificial divide. We're simply reflecting one that already exists and saying it includes the rest of the miraculous gifts as well.
And going back to that, that's just affirming what the Scriptures teach. That's not your opinion. That's the plain revelation of God.
That's exactly right. And so that's a very hard argument to overcome. And it's an easy answer to the, this age to come sort of argument. The other one is a bit of a pragmatic argument, but you hear it a lot. And that is that all of these charismatics, let's say 500 million, and the number varies between 500 million, 770 million professing Christians who profess charismatic experience. That many professing Christians, they say, can't be wrong. Mm-hmm. And my response to that is they can and have been, and most charismatics would admit that, because most charismatics would reject Roman Catholic theology and would reject the miracles, the supposed miracles that have been attached to the Roman Catholic Church through its history. And so an argument like that sounds reasonable, but when it's really scrutinized, it's not. Of course they can be wrong. The question is, as you men have already posed it in several different ways, is not what have I experienced, what have you experienced, what have 500 million experienced? The question is, what does the Bible say? And that's what we're going to be held accountable to.